And it's also not true, because there's plenty of business for everyone. So, don't be afraid to listen to different approaches. And, listening is key, really. Like, that's a lot of it, because like the cis men who I work with, when I do work with them, they work with me because they love the way I approach things, because it's different to them, and they learn. And because they come with that mentality, it's like the old-fashioned word for it is teachable, but that sounds quite condescending. But bringing that mentality of, I'm here to learn from you and you're here to learn from me, and we're going to make this together as a team and enjoy this process. And it's not about me looking good in this space, and it's not about me peacocking in this space. And I'm being very, very diplomatic with my descriptors here. I'd describe it completely differently if we weren't on a podcast. But, there's no one's measuring each other's success or sizing each other up or weighing each other up in the room. It's not about power structures in a room. It's about people coming together and making something cool.
And isn't that the best part about it also? Like, right?
We get paid to make magic.
For me, like the most fun thing is to be in a room with another musician and help guide them to make the best possible take they can do. And I'm capturing it. I'm helping them. Like, it's just this collaboration of two people.
It's lightning in a bottle,
or more.
Right? That's what we're trying to do. And the more we think about it as being like, we're all a team. We're all like, you're the people who are making a record with, they are a team with you. And that's what we bring. But it all begins with people being open, to different approaches. And I think also with people who are engineers or in any kind of an engineering job, there can be this idea that there is a technical way to do things and that is the way. But actually, real engineering is about problem solving, is about trying things, is about troubleshooting. And ultimately, women and gender minorities are great at that, because we have to overcome obstacles all the time in all aspects of our lives. And we don't have a choice, but we get really good at it. And when you start transferring those skills over to something beautiful and creative where people can flourish and people can max out their skills and have a ton of fun doing it, it changes the game. It changes the experience of making the record for the artist, for everyone involved. So yeah, don't be afraid of different approaches and of trying things and of listening. Because ultimately, that's really how things are going to change, when you basically stop trying so hard to compete us out of the space and see it as a collaboration. That's probably what I'd say.
Yeah. And, just to echo those words about like how much there is in this industry, like there's so many songs being put out every single day. You know what I mean?
All the time.
So there are so many artists looking to work with different producers, and you just have to have a what's the opposite of a scarcity mindset? I always forget the
abundance mindset.
You have to have an abundance mindset. There's so many people that want to work and make music, and there's so many people that can help, and like that's all good. Let's forget about the pie.
And you know
like
what? That my influence from that has come from 12-step recovery. I've just taken that kind of teaching and put it in this space, and everything gets better.
Yeah, you're not the first person to have mentioned that.
I bet I'm not.
Yeah, well, I'm happy that you're doing good.
Yeah.
And I guess on that note, let's walk through your approach to song creation. When an artist comes to you, or we could start with one of your songs, or maybe when an artist comes to you, what's the first thing you do? How does the song come together for you usually?
Yeah, let's start there. I mean, a lot of it is sitting like the first meetings for me are often sitting an artist down and asking them what they want to achieve. Like, what have they got in their head that they want to get into the world? And that's a good place to start, because some artists are thinking about certain levels of career that they want to achieve, and some artists are just thinking about the song they want to make. And it tells you a lot about an artist. Not necessarily that the one is better or one is worse, but it tells you a lot about the kind of artist that you've got on your hands. And then you talk through basically how far they've got themselves already. Some of them will just have it like as a voice note and like a couple of written lines and they're coming to you looking for a writer producer. Some of them are coming to you being like, here's a whole song and a demo and the lyrics and the chord progressions, and I want the bass to kick in at this point, and they've got like a really developed idea, in which case what they're really looking for is a production collaborator. They're looking to do what they do, but have it elevated to a higher production standard than what they can achieve with their technical knowledge. So ultimately, some of that is still going to be writing if you end up changing the arrangement. But ultimately, that's a slightly different role from taking a song from almost nothing to a full song, and going through that demoing process first and then building the rest of the production on top. So a lot of it is, and often I'll have them come here and we'll have a coffee and we'll just chat. We'll chat for as long as we either have or we need to chat until I have a clear idea of what their vision is. I do think it's important, if the artist doesn't have an idea as to how to move forward with their own promotion and campaign, I will put them on that path, because ultimately they could create an absolute banger, but if they don't know how they're going to promote it or where, or even why really, then they need to start asking those questions of themselves and thinking that process through, because ultimately I can't make their song successful. I can create I can make the best possible song or album or EP that I can, but then they have to take it out into the world and they have to do something with it. And I can put them in touch with people, but ultimately it's on their shoulders. So that whole process takes up the first stage, and then we get into it, and then I basically make a plan of like, right, we're gonna do these things first, and then we're gonna have a little chat and see how you feel about those things, and then we're gonna decide on the next stage and how we're gonna walk through that process. And it works like that. Like, I usually have like a loose structure in my mind as to how it's gonna work, but ultimately I have to let the artist lead the way in terms of, like I said, they have to dance off and make it work afterwards. So they have to be happy with
their song. It's their baby.
They have to be happy with what they take away. So there's always like a loose plan, but ultimately a lot of it is responsive to what the artist needs from one stage to the next.
Awesome. So what's the, I don't know, when you hear the song and you want to start producing it, like in the DAW or whatever, what's the first thing you use? Do you have a usual, or do you have a not usual? Like, like what? How does it technically come together?
If it's a production job, like just production, not a remix or anything, then what I'm doing is I'm pulling out of that demo. Hopefully I get demo stems. That's like perfect. I'm going to basically then go through those demo stems and decide what I do and don't like, and what I feel like works and what I feel like doesn't. Or, for example, if someone's got a synth line that's a great synth line, but the synth itself doesn't work, find something else. So it's basically a case of like, right, let's transform the foundations. Ultimately, like, I'm always super keen to get like a rough vocal in there of some description to give it structure, and to set all of those structures up using, kind of the labels at the top. And then I want to get a beat in, and I want to get a bass in, provided they want a bass at all. Obviously, if it's a nice person picking at if this is a folk track and they're playing guitar and it's just guitar and voice, then it's completely different. But generally speaking, I'm in pop, I'm in indie, I'm in dance. There's a bass and a beat somewhere. So I'm looking. So basically, it's you begin to trawl through your well-used presets and look at like your immediate go-tos for those things. And at that stage, it's just a lot of it's placeholders. You want something to give a vibe. It's not necessarily polished. You're probably going to like change that kick out or throw it through filters or, do stuff like that later. But for now, the thing you need is structure. You need the bones to put the meat on. So it's usually beat and it's usually bass. And then we start looking at things like synthesizers, whether or not we want guitar on, because obviously guitar tracking is like one of these things that I quite like doing, but it takes a long time, and you either have to be like a real dab hand at comping guitar lines, or you have to have like a red hot guitarist who's really good at playing to a click or a kit if click isn't their normal thing. So So it's basically, then making instrument choices and start kind of marking in terms, like I keep notes alongside every project where I'm like, this needs a flourish at bar 32. I don't know what that's going to look like yet, but in terms of the landscape of the song, it's going to need something there. Otherwise, it's just going to have like 4 bars of the same equivalent as the intro, and that's kind of boring. You need something in there to make that
mix it up.
But also,
Transition.
There's an ebb and flow to people's concentration, and especially with pop music, people expect to be surprised constantly. They always want it to just level up or to kind of or to surprise them. So I'm constantly thinking about like ear candy is like a constant dialogue I'm having with myself alongside everything else I'm doing. So it's like, right, something needs to change here, or even like, we need to change up the beat at this point. We need more treble in the percussion at this point. Like, we need a shaker under everything. Like, I'm kind of fleshing out, making notes. And then I send out the first arrangement. That's usually like a rough arrangement with a rough vocal. I'll send out to the artist. They'll be like, this is where I'm going. These are the, thanks, and we exchange references, we talk about it. They say, that synth is terrible. I like the line, but can we change this? But also, it depends as well on on the technical education the artist has had. I was an artist with 0 technical education when I started working with producers. My producers were very, very generous with their attitude with me, and they rolled with it. And they, instead of, bar references, they take my timestamps. Like, they were very sweet. And so I have to be prepared to do that as well, and to do a little bit of educating as I go along, so that they have a better time either with me or with another producer on the next track in terms of that communication. But actually, I do encourage a lot of artists to take a basic course in engineering, because it will solve so many communication problems and save so much time and so many emails of just being like, did you mean this? No, I meant this. But that doesn't... Everybody
needs to learn a DAW,
but
right?
That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, and someone... And if you say, well, I need to... one of the things that's come up a lot lately is around bass, which I find really interesting. Something that actually Katie taught me was to do with the width.
You're talking to a bass player,
yes,
so...
was the width of bass in a track and how much room it takes up, and how basically you need to figure out how to compress it correctly and how to EQ it correctly if you want a little bit more texture in there, and things like that. And so, for example, one of the references that someone sent to me recently when I was working on something was a Gorillaz track, and they said, I want the bass in this, but the bass wasn't actually a bass. It was a granular synthesizer that was being played at the bottom end. So it wasn't a bass instrument. And so all that texture that they were hoping to get in there was really needed from a synthesizer, or to basically treat the bass that they'd already provided. So I had to explain that to them. And I said, right, if we start moving in this direction, then the bass is going to start taking up some mid frequencies and also start masking other instruments that sit in those frequencies, because basically of the structure of the sound and the kind of the texture that you want, it lives around 2K, and it's going to mask some of these other instruments we've been working with. So if you want that, then that's fine, but you need to understand there's going to be some instruments that disappear. And so that's literally just telling an artist about how, the spectrum of frequencies work and where the instrument sits in those frequencies. But if an artist already knew that, I wouldn't have to tell them. They'd just be like, okay, I want this texture, but could we use another instrument for it? Or can we remove that instrument so that the bass can have more room over here? So it's just one of these things that if artists do that bit of due diligence, it's going to help everybody. So yeah.
It's a puzzle, and things have to be compromised.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And, to be fair to the artist, when I explained that to them, they totally took it on board, and they were like, great, okay, thank you for explaining that to me. and I did my bit, and then I sent it over, and they were very happy. So that all worked out well.
That's going back to you talking about being a the transparent producer, right?
Yes. Yeah, totally.
Being upfront and open about all these